I'd like to call to order the Madison County Board of Education, August 10th meeting. As you come in the back door, there is copies of the agenda, and if there's anyone that wants to speak to any of the items that are on the agenda, we ask that you fill out the back and give that information to Tammy over here on the left, that she can let us know. First is the reading of our vision statement. Mr. Rutherford.
Madison County Schools, in partnership with the community, strives to equip educators and students with the skills to lead by example, develop and speak with a unique voice, and explore their academic curiosity to make a positive impact on our community and world.
Thank you. Is there anyone that needed to speak? Okay, perfect. We'll move on down to our consent agenda. These are items that the board sees regularly. We're very familiar with them. Items to be approved tonight on the consent agenda are the minutes of the July 13th meeting, claims, the record of superintendent's personnel actions, the leaves of absence, technology surplus, the 2023-2024 classified salary schedule amendments, acknowledge review of the special ed procedures, ARC chairpersons, and the following out-of-state field trips. The Madison Central High School volleyball team trip to Sevierville, Tennessee on September 8th through the 9th of 2023, and the Madison Central High School band trip to Obetz, Ohio on September 23rd through the 24th of 2023. Does anybody have any questions or anything that we need to pull out to discuss? If not, if I can get a motion then to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Cobb. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rutherford. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is number 5, and it's the beginning of our monthly reports. First, we have our instruction report. We have Ms. Angie Wilcox, our MTSS School Counseling Services, will be presenting the instruction report tonight. And she brought these fabulous.
Yes, and that is one thing I'm going to share tonight. Thank you all for having me. So I wanted to share two very exciting things for our kids and staff in Madison County Schools. First, let me review a little bit about our MTSS system and what that looks like. So that's just a multi-tiered system of support. Every school has an MTSS team, and the district has a team. And so they meet monthly, and they look at all the data, that whether it's instructional data or it's behavior data, and they are making sure that all kids at Tier 1 are receiving everything they need. When they look at all that data and decide, okay, we need some more support for these students, then they move into a Tier 2 and they get interventions, support whatever they need, academic, behavior, social, emotional. And then if they look at that data and progress monitoring and say, you know what, we need more, then they move to a Tier 3 and we provide more support. So the two big things that we're really excited about, last year we spent a lot of time collaborating and coming together, looking at what interventions work best for reading, math, writing, behavior, motor, like fine motor and gross motor, and speech. And so we have made a database, if you will, and it will be available to teachers this year to go in and say, okay, what is the skill deficit that the student has? And they can look across the top of this nice spreadsheet, and then they can match that with an intervention that's been research-based and proven to work. And then they will try that for, like, let's say that Tier 2, and then if they feel like, gosh, this kid needs more support, then they would use that same resource and provide Tier 3. The goal would be the Tier 2 intervention would work and they would be back on level. So that's one very exciting piece. The second, I work a lot, with school counselors as well and coordinating district things for them. And we've really talked about making a calm and caring and consistent environment. So you'll see some of those calming space tools beside you tonight. But what we did last year is we used GEAR grant money and we purchased calming space tools for every counselor in the district, including our social workers. And so they could take those back, they can put them in their office. Some schools even trained teachers and loaned out some of those materials and had spaces in the classroom for kids. They're great. I keep one all the time just for those anxious moments or whatever. But so those are just some things that we really focused last year on supporting students and academic and behavioral. So those are the two things I wanted to share with you tonight. Do you all have any?
And you guys are doing that
Questions?
in all elementary, middle, and high school, correct? Okay.
Yep, they have both of those resources and supports in all grade levels. Yes.
And then do the school-based teams come together and then report off to the centralized group? Or how's that interaction work?
They do. So there is one member from each school team that is on the district team.
Okay.
And so last year we met monthly just to get our feet rolling and make sure we all knew the expectations and how to problem solve when we have all this data. And so this year, every school will still meet monthly, and that representative will come back and meet 4 times a year
Okay.
as a district.
That's good to hear, because
Yeah.
sometimes I think people assume that people at central office know what's going on, and unless there's that collaboration.
Right.
There's a missing link there, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, and we did, we talked last year as a district team about separating sometimes and doing like an elementary district team and a middle and high district team. Because a lot of times when we're problem solving and coming up with new supports, they look a little different. Just like the calming spaces, they look different. We bought different things for different schools, different age groups, so.
And is there a counseling element in there somewhere? I mean, particularly for like our middle and high school students?
When you say counseling element, what do you mean?
Like those students that need counseling, that need to have someone that they can talk to.
Yes, so we are really pushing, the recommended 60% direct service with students. If we see in Tier 1 that they needed support, your first support is going to be the counselor. And then sometimes they need more support, and we do have outside agencies that we have MOAs with, which come in, to our schools as well. But yes,
I know
that's
that-
definitely an
And
option.
mental health has been a huge thing for all of us over the last few years. So
Yes.
that's good to hear.
And I thank you all for supporting that too.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you for having
So
me.
good to hear. We know you all are doing a great job.
Yes, thank you so much.
Next is item 5B. We have Ben Burnett, our Director of Technology, who will be presenting our data breach technology report.
Well, good evening. It is time for our lovely annual data security update. And so I know this is the most exciting time of the year, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. So we'll just go ahead and get started. Why do we do this? We do this every year because of Kentucky regulation, and so we have to give this presentation to the board before August 31st. And so we've been having some lovely trainings in the district, and we've had somebody who talks about language and why common language is important. So let's start with what is the data security breach. And so it is the unauthorized acquisition, distribution, disclosure, destruction, manipulation, or release of personal information that could result in the likelihood of harm to the individual. And so that likelihood of harm is the key when you think about a data breach. There are many times when, for instance, we theoretically data breach ourselves by releasing information out to the public on Facebook, for instance, and things like that. The real question becomes, when does it cause harm? And so with those data security breaches, we are really talking about personal information, personal identifiable information, personal information that could lead to financial issues, things like that. And so personal information is just a combination of an individual's first name or last name, first name or first initial and last name, personal mark or unique biometric or genetic print or image. Now, that last biometric or genetic print or image has become a big thing because, as we all know, we unlock our phones with our faces and our thumbprints and those kinds of things. And so, though we don't do a lot of that, storing that data for our students, that is still a thing. And so, it is a combination of those things along with social security numbers, taxpayer identification numbers, driver's license numbers, passport numbers, account numbers such as credit, debit cards, things like that, or individually identifiable health information. And so, with that being said, what do we do if our information gets out there? I was actually talking to a colleague of mine this week, and he was talking about, I guess, Heister Yale had got hit with not a data breach, but ransomware last week. And so what do we do if we experience a breach, right? It's kind of been on my mind just because we've seen it recently within geographical distance, And so first off, information security breaches shall be handled in accordance with KRS and it includes but is not limited to investigations and notifications. An initial investigation should be conducted to confirm if the event is a data breach as defined by the policy. And again, the big thing is harm. Can it cause harm to the individual or not? And so what do we do if we confirm that a breach has occurred? If we've had enough information out there that could cause harm, we shall notify within 72 hours the Commissioner of the Kentucky State Police, the Auditor of Public Accounts, the Attorney General, and the Commissioner of the Kentucky Department of Education. And so further investigation must then be done by the district to determine if the information has been misused or if misuse has been or is likely to occur. And so again, it's all about that, what potential harm is there. And so if it's determined to be the case, then we shall, within 48 hours, notify the Commissioner of Kentucky State Police, the Auditor of Public Accounts, the Attorney General, Commissioner of Education, and the Commissioner of Department of Libraries and Archives. And so, a couple of board policies there. We have the Notice of Security Breach and Investigative Procedures. And so the procedure defines that within 35 days of providing these notices, the district shall notify all individuals impacted by the security breach. Depending on the number of people to be contacted, notification may be in the form of face-to-face meeting. We can call, we can post on the website, things like that. And if the number of affected individuals exceeds 1,000, we must also notify all consumer credit reporting agencies included on the list by the Office of the Attorney General. Now, that's a lot of stuff. What are we doing to stay away from those things? And so we have, and we're always doing this, we work to identify hard copy and digital data that needs to be protected. We provide awareness training to our staff that have access to personal information. This year I talked to all principals about the importance of, personal devices and not using those, for instance, about encrypting hard drives and all kinds of things. And we can go into that further if you'd like in a private session, just so we don't put out some of our security practices publicly. We provide for physical security with our hard copy and digital records. And we provide software security for our digital stuff. And so just a few things. You don't think about it, but our data center is behind 2 separately keyed locked doors with limited controlled keys. It is, thanks to our maintenance department, Mr. Reister back there, it is wonderfully climate controlled. And so if you ever need a 65-degree room, that is the place to go in Madison County. All of our servers and essential hardware, they're on battery backups. We have a generator in case of prolonged power failure. We have a non-water-based fire suppression system, so if something happens, that data center stays good. We don't ruin it with water. And we also have remote backups that are off-site, just in case something would happen. We also restrict admin access. A lot of people don't think about the random Facebook link that you click on and you get hacked, right? They don't think about the even attachments and emails that look legitimate. We had one that it was a PDF and actually the Palo Alto, y'all remember the Palo Alto renewals that we did? Palo Alto caught that one. It said, hey, it appears to be a PDF, but it's actually not, and it's living in somebody's Google Drive. And so the moment they download that thing and open it, they're getting some kind of malware, ransomware, something. And so we have tools in place to try to prevent those things and identify it ahead of time so that we can then shut those things off before they happen. And so we also do software updates. We run antivirus software. We update and scan daily. We also, and this is a big one, we give minimum rights and access to network resources to try to keep those things from happening, and if they do happen, to keep them from spreading. There was this director of technology for Barron County Schools. His name's Steve Gum. And they had a ransomware attack. And he said that one of the issues that they discovered during that time was that everybody had admin access. And so he said that he knew of somebody called him and said, hey, I just got ransomwared. And then somebody else called him, hey, I just got ransomwared. And then there's a computer sitting right in front of him that belonged to one of his techs, and it got ransomwared without anybody touching it. And so he said that after screaming and panicking for a solid 20 seconds, he went over and unplugged everything, and they have since mitigated some of that stuff. And so we do that as well. We require teachers to have strong passwords and 2-factor authentication, and once our people leave the district, we try to shut those accounts off pretty quick. And so that's a lot of stuff that we're doing, and there's a whole bunch more, but 702 KAR 1170 requires districts to acknowledge to their local board prior to August 31st of each year that we have reviewed the best practices for our district. And so as of right now, we have done that. And so anybody have any questions for me, any comments?
What kind of liability do we have, if we do get that out there and something happens to an individual where they hack their information, steal their money, whatever.
Yep.
I mean, I know I've gotten a letter from people and say, hey, we got hacked and your social security number and everything's out there, but big deal, what can I do here?
Right.
So what kind of liability do we have?
So it depends on what you're asking exactly. But when you say liability, you know, we do have, you know, student personally identifiable information. There are people out there who look for things like that for instance, you know how when you have, if you have a college student, they turn 18 and they immediately get 22 credit card applications? Part of that is at some point, that company has purchased their information from somewhere. And so we have all of that. We do have highly desirable information from, for our students, for our staff members. As far as liability is concerned, there is, as long as we're following best practices, if something were to happen, we've got liability insurance to cover that and that kind of thing. But, there is some liability to the district, and so we are very cautious and very, it's on our mind all the time that this is something that we have to protect.
So basically what I'm saying, if something really happened, it could come back to us, but we have insurance.
It could if we were, I think mostly if we're negligent. If there's something out there that we just know is a problem and we're not doing anything to fix it, I think that's where the liability really comes in.
Thank you.
Doesn't the federal government regulates the notification and how you have to handle when you have a breach?
Yep. And it's a big thing. We talk about it in director meetings all the time. Ever since the war in Ukraine, for instance, we've seen across the board, I believe it's a 250% at this point increase daily in cyber attacks. It's a big thing right now, and so we work with particularly KDE. I have to give a shout out to those guys. They do a lot to help us mitigate and never see these things. There's a lot of stuff that they do on their side to keep us safe too. So, yeah, we do a lot, and we work hard to try to make sure that never happens. So.
Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, item 5C, our construction report. And I guess first up is Jonathan Smith with Branscombe, talking about our new Madison Middle.
Thank you. Good evening to you all. Just want to give you a quick update on the middle school construction. If you've been out through there the last little bit, you can see a lot of things have changed at the school site. That's actually standing on the developer side, looking back towards what would become the baseball and softball fields. Those are getting down close to grade. The last couple of weeks we've seen a lot of dirt around, but a lot of that's been moved. A lot of it's coming down to subgrade in those areas. This is still looking back to the other direction towards the baseball and softball fields at the site. This is what would become your football field. As you can see, the pad of it is pretty well to grade there at the football field. So that's coming together really good. This is on the upper side looking back towards the football, towards the back of the site. You can see, the road that goes along the edge there. You can see where that's being developed. This is the building pad in the front. The building pad is 2 subgrade, and the general contractor has accepted that grade, and he is actually starting on site, has started this week on site. So the Allen Company has got the pad on grade, and we're in the process next week. There will be a lot of concrete being poured next week. We'll start footers on the building itself next week. This is that front parking lot towards our construction trailer. You can see we've got temporary stone in there, a lot of staging area. Of course, there'll be a lot more trades on site, a lot more parking, a lot more workers on site, so we've got to provide that room for them. So we've got that temporary stone down to provide that. And with all the rock we've had on the site, it's been really nice to have that extra rock because we're using a lot of that shot rock around the site to keep everybody up and out of the mud and not tracking mud out on Goggins Lane. So that's been good. There is a lot of rock, and we've been beating rock for a long time, but we're able to use a lot of that now that we've got it busted up. This is looking back towards the overall athletic fields of, you can see all the way, that's the road that runs along your property there, your neighbor. That's what will go around the school and take you back to the athletic fields. You can see that road there that goes all the way to the back. You can see kind of how, how it's stair-stepped as you go down to a different level of field. You can see that grade changing as you go down through there. So that's being developed all the way down through there. And actually, the Allen Company will start with the storm drainage in the back and work their way to the front. Now that they've got the pad done, they're focusing towards the back, working on the athletic fields, and then they'll work back towards the front. And that'll free up the front of the site where the building pad is so that we can start on foundations up there. This is a lot of the storm drain going in. This is one of the main trunk lines. It's under what would be that front parking lot. It's all covered up now, but that's all been in and backfilled and completed there in the front. We wanted to get a lot of that in before we started on those footers, so they've been focusing on getting it in. You can see the boxes and the piping there that's being put in before it was covered up. So a lot of that storm drain we need to get in the front of the site. We're going ahead and getting that in and getting that covered up before weather turns bad and frees up other areas for the contractors to work in. Again, that's storm drainage running up to one of the boxes, one of the storm grates. So a lot of that is being installed to get ahead while we've got a chance of getting that. So when we do get rain, we got somewhere for the water to go. We can maintain that water on the site and just doesn't run everywhere. You can see a lot of rebar's being shut up site. They're actually tying rebar, getting ready for footings on the site. So a lot of it's being pre-tied so that when we do start digging footers, they're not tying rebar in the ditch. They've got a lot of it pre-tied and they'll be ready to go once they start opening up footers and pouring concrete. You can see there the guys are getting everything made up, getting their mats made up, tied up, ready to go when we do start footings. If you've been out by there, the project signs up, you see a big 8x16 sign, you can't miss it on Coggins Lane there, right in front of the job site trailer. So that's been put up there. Since we last met, we've had a pre-geothermal meeting on site. We're going to start the geothermal wells in probably about 2 to 3 weeks. They're going to start on site. Of course, that's a big, messy operation. We've got 107 wells, 400 feet deep that's got to be drilled. So we're going to go ahead and get those drilled, get the piping in for the geothermal so we can get that part behind us while they're focusing on getting the footings into the building. So a lot's going to change in the next 30 to 45 days, a lot more trades on site. The general contractor is bringing a big crew for foundation starting Monday, so there will be a lot of concrete starting getting poured next week. So a lot of things will change before the next board meeting. Just pray for good weather. So.
It's exciting every time we drive by there. It's fun to see.
Yeah.
There's so many people out there working.
It's a big site. It's a big site.
Yeah.
A lot going on. Any questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Glad to see it moving.
Next, we have Travis Curry with Trace Creek Construction to talk about the Phillips Building renovation.
Well, good evening.
Hi there.
My report's not going to be as good as Jonathan's because for the last 30 days we haven't done a whole lot. We basically are as far as we can go for right now, waiting on some materials to be delivered on the Phillips Building. So we're just out there going, reviewing some paperwork and plans for the CTC building. So an update on CTC building is we have a pre-bid meeting scheduled for next Tuesday the 15th, and then we have a bid opening scheduled for August 24th. So that's for the HVAC portion of the project. So that's kind of the extent of my report. So late this time. So hopefully by the next board meeting, we'll have some good news to report on the bids that we're taking on the 24th, and maybe we can see a little progress on the Phillips building.
That's good.
Any questions?
No, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Tony Thomas.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Tony.
So I'll start with some of the construction, and then you have some agenda items that I'll go ahead and give a report on, and you can act on them later. Certainly stick around to make sure that if there's any questions on those agenda items, we can address them. The project, of course, that Travis was just referring to, this is the demolition. They've taken it back to the point where the expansion joint was, and it's ready for the new work. He was, and of course, that's the face of the tech center. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we're approving the final plans. So that will get a new facade on it, and that will be a parking lot in front of there. And just a little closer, as Travis was saying, they've done some construction work and putting the footing in and putting the anchor bolts for the steel, but we're now waiting on that steel to be produced and fabricated before they can go any further. So that's it for the Phillips building. Any questions on Phillips? If we look at the middle school, I like this drone shot last month. I just brought it back again, but it gives you a good perspective of the entire site. That's Goggins Lane in front of you there, looking west. And if we go to the other end and come back and look east, that's a shot. Again, some of this is duplicating, but the water line's going in the front of the site, and of course the hydrant. This is just a good shot of just how good a job they did of making that building pad so flat and in good shape. He said the contractors approved it. I don't see why they wouldn't, because it's in good shape. That extra rock, he said, that they had to move around, they've got I think that's the Prudential symbol there that they've got. They've got a lot of rock to move around, that's for sure. And that's all the way back at the site. There's a lot of storm water coming to this site, and there's a man working down in the deep manhole where the storm drainage is coming through. So thought it was an interesting shot. And here's the daredevil bulldozer guy just pushing that last bit of topsoil on the top of that hill that he can get up there. So a lot of topsoil stockpiled right now as well. And that's just a close-up of him about to go over the edge. So fun stuff. I'm sure they're practicing safe, but it makes me cringe a little bit. There's the same sign that Jonathan showed us, but in general, good progress. I know some rains have stopped them from being able to get started on the concrete a little quicker, but I think now that they've got the building pad in place and the concrete going to get started, and as he said, a lot of people on site, it's going to start going vertical, and that'll happen quick. Any questions on the middle school construction? On your agenda, you have some action items. One of them is Phillips Building renovation, Phase 2. Of course, Phase 1 was the demolition construction that we talked about. And there's also a BG3. So this is just a big picture, just to remind you, if we're looking at the site plan, Madison Central to the right, there's the main Phillips Building, Tech Building, which is an addition, which is there already. Lower left, additional parking, there'll be additional, and I'm going to blow these up, but soccer field and concessions, the band lot, which was added that we discussed, and then, of course, additional parking up at the top, which is beyond the soccer field. We zoom in on the band lot a little bit, so that's located right between Daniel Boone and the Phillips Building, 2nd Street on the right, the new soccer and concessions to the left. We've done it so that the people at the band lot, they can unlock the doors in the concessions building, which has restrooms, so they can go, from the end of that parking lot right over up into the concession stands to use the restrooms there while they're out, practicing band. If we go over to the soccer fielding, we've gone a little bit to the left there. There's the concessions building, the soccer field. If you remember, we're doing grass, but probably Bermuda grass as a base bid, but artificial turf as an alternate bid. Grandstands and press box seats about 700. And then, of course, I talked about the concessions. There's the concessions building floor plan, so you're kind of approving the final plans for the concessions building here. Now it's got, dimensions and reference tags and notes and things of that nature, but concessions and storage on the right, a breezeway through the middle, large restrooms in between, and then some locker rooms that are accessible to the restrooms as well. And we generated some simple renderings for this just so you can see what the building looks like. Of course, the context around it is just grass and sky, but that's from the back. That's looking if you were right at the concession stand window with the little breeze there and the breezeway in between there. And that's the breezeway with water fountains and doors to restrooms, things of that nature. If we look at the floor plan, of course, this is the final plan. It's kind of hard to see this, but I'll zoom in. That's your whole Phillips building there with the main entry up to the upper left and the second stories of the cheer squad building and the tech center to the lower right. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see where Georgia Street is now, and you can see where the tech building is. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in quicker. Now, these are the same shots that I showed you last month, just because they're easier to read. The final plans have a lot of dimensions and notes and things like that, but so now you're entering from the right where the parking lot is that will also feed the technology building. There's entry, lobby, reception, office, large office spaces, break room, and then lots of special storage for DBP, special education, finance, things of that nature. And of course, big restrooms, men and women, mechanical and technology storage. And then towards the front of the building, of course, there's a large shop that you can drive through, and we call those 5 storage spaces, but they're actually where HVAC has a place to go work, hardware has a place to go work, electric has a place to go work, and they store things there as well. So they're like little shops. This is actually the plans now. We got notes and dimensions, a little bit harder to read on the screen, but if you go, there's hatching, lots of details. But again, this is the final plans that are going to be distributed out to bid. This is the tech center, and that's the lower floor on the top and the upper floor on the bottom. It doesn't look like there's a lot going on there because really inside the building, there's not a lot going on there. Most of what we're doing is those dark lines across the top where we're putting a facade. You remember that picture I showed you? We were looking at it's not really something to look at right now because it had a building in front of it. So we're going to try to give it a good facade and insulate that facade as well. And of course, the 2 buildings that are kind of to the back, that's the metal building that has youth services on the bottom and cheer studio on top. We're making a handicap access ramp to the youth services down low. And of course, the cheer studio is getting some work where we're filling in some louvers and some cold air comes in. Then if we zoom in on the youth services, I was just going to point out that we're doing some work in put a little AC in the hallway there, new AC in that area, and the office up in the top was an old mechanical room, and that's now turning into an office that the youth services area department can have for their needs. Now, with that said, we've done our best to do a rendering just to show you the form of the building. Now, when we go to choose panels and things like that after the bid, we'll even do a better rendering. But this is, of course, there's no Madison Central, there's no Robinson Turley. Georgia Street's there in front of us. In fact, Robinson Turley is just a big green pasture right there now. But you can see what the building form will look like. The front of the tech center, what we're doing with Phillips Building, that will be all new metal panel on Phillips Building. If I zoom in on that a little bit, now that end wall to the right is where we were looking, a big open hole right now on the Phillips Building. But you can see, try to make it look a little nicer, and parking lot in front there. We're taking new metal panel all along Georgia Street. So this would be a view from 2nd Street, and it's still Georgia Street in front of you there. And you can kind of see the entry there. All the way down 2nd Street, we're either painting or putting new panel or painting existing panel so that it will all have some new appearance along the front of it there. So that kind of gives you an idea of the scope of what we're doing on the exterior there.
So I just want to be clear, because we're showing an entrance here. Are we moving the entrance to the back?
No, we're not. Yes, the entrance to the office areas will be to the back, and that'll be the main entrance. But someone could still come to this door, but it would just be locked. Now we're replacing that door, and there'll be a window right to the beside it that we're keeping.
I just didn't see I didn't know if they were supposed to enter through the technology, because it's got like the...
Oh, and that's a good question. If you look at this right here, it's hard, and there will be a canopy. See how there's a canopy on the tech building? This rendering is not showing. There'll be a canopy on that end wall because there's a door there, but because of the shading, you can't see it.
I just wanted to make sure I was...
No, that's it's a very good question. If we go back to right here, that door, on the right-hand side where that reception and vestibule is, there's a 3'4", a rather wide door if you need to move furniture and things like that in. That's swinging out into that parking lot. That will have a canopy over it. So pretty simple entry, but,
But we'll probably want to put our sign that this is the maintenance building there instead
Yes.
of on 2nd Street.
Yes, good point. Good point. Indeed. Yeah, so that doesn't, that door, you can barely, it's just to there's 3 windows and then a door with a half glass in it, and that's what you see right there. And it will have a canopy over it. and that was the Georgia Street View. So there's also a BG3. The BG3 is no different at, they make us, they have the board approve one at design development, they have the board approve one at final plans. It has not changed at all. It stays at $8 million. But if there's any questions on that, when that item comes up, be glad to talk about it. Of course, you're also approving the plans for Phase 2 of the Kentucky Tech Center. These colored renderings are the ones that show the scope, so I've just brought them back again. They're the same things you looked at design development. Entry on the right, renovating the classrooms, the HVAC bid that Travis talked about is coming up. That will be Phase 1. Hopefully you get reimbursed with ESSER funds there. Putting a new kitchen cafeteria into the final plans, the multipurpose room in the cafeteria. And of course, this is an enlarged kitchen. Of course, we've gone over with Mrs. Carmichael and others about what all is being installed in this kitchen. This is HVAC. This is what's going to be bid in Phase 1. But of course, so there's no HVAC really in Phase 2, just to clarify that. But there is a lot of electrical, so there'll be a lot of electrical in the final plans for Phase 2. Same thing for the BG3 on the final plans for the Tech Center. It's 5.5, I'm sorry, the total is 6.6, but you have the paperwork in front of you, but the construction estimate is 5.5. Just a reminder that the BG3 is facility specific, even though your BG1 puts together the Phillips and the ATC. So that's why you may see those numbers different. And just a quick recap, the HVAC package intended to use ESSER funds, bids. Now, I guess, so we've moved that a week. So that's the 24th now, so I'm sorry, I need to, is that what you said, the 20, yeah, 24th?
24.
Okay. Then, of course, we already talked about the scope of Phase 2, and then I just talked about the BG1 and so forth. So I believe that's it on that. And the one last item that I'll bring up is later in your agenda, which again, we'll be here to answer questions, and Mr. Wood's back here if you have questions for him. BG1 for Madison Kindergarten at Mayfield, HVAC renovation. This is where we're going to come in and do similar to what's going on at the former Kentucky Tech Center, tear out the ceilings, lighting, put new HVAC in. You've already done the cooling tower, so that's out of the way. This is on the district facility plan. There's a total project cost of $4,186,250, and of course the funding sources, I'm assuming you have this document, are noted down at the bottom. So that is on your agenda as well. Any questions on the Kindergarten Academy BG1?
Is that something we're looking to start now? Or while they're in class?
Well, you still have to go through a design process as well. So that's to, this will send it to KDE and they'll say you're good to go, and then you can start having those discussions about how are we scheduling this, who's designing it, who's building it, things like that.
And with that, we've already installed the cooling tower.
Right.
And that is the item with the largest lead time.
Yeah.
So what we're thinking is the majority of this work is work that can be completed in the summertime. So we'll probably have to do some, if we can get everything bid, if we can get all of the plans and everything submitted, we can take it out to bid probably around November is what we're hoping to be able to do. If we can get that, then we'll get our contractor in place, get the additional items ordered, and be ready to go. And they'll probably do some prep work as we finish out this school year, and then hit the ground wide open on as soon as the kids leave the building. And we should be able to get that put back in place is what, and that's what everyone has kind of said around the table as we've discussed. So so that's what that's our thinking.
Any other questions?
I have a couple questions far back on the pictures, if that's okay.
Yeah.
On the concession stand, real
Yes.
quick. There was the storage across from the concession stand. Remind me, that is for soccer and band storage, or just soccer? I know you all have told me, and I just...
Well, no, I mean, For us, it's a Madison County decision.
So
you
whoever
all
wants, needs storage
You all
back
can
there.
make that
Okay.
decision. Mhm.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, to answer your question, the intent of that space that's designed there is, would be for soccer storage.
Soccer storage, okay.
Yes,
Did we
we've
talk-
allocated a portion of the Phillips building for band storage.
Phillips
Yes.
Building for band storage.
Got it. See, I knew they were, thank you.
Which will,
I know it was somewhere, I just was processing.
which as we build that lot will be just directly out the door, right onto that,
Got
for that
it.
lot, yeah.
I just couldn't remember.
Should be very convenient for the band.
And then this is a crazy question, but the water fountain that's right there by the concession stand. I know most people nowadays, I saw it had 2 levels, one for adult, one for a child. Is it possible for an outdoor water fountain that's, most people have those canteen things now, like a water bottle, like not this, but you know what I'm saying, that they bring?
Water bottle filler?
Filling station?
Yes.
Water bill effect?
Are they a lot more expensive, or is that?
No, not on initial install.
Not really. We're doing them in schools now. Yeah.
Right, and this is outside, so I wasn't sure if that was,
Well, that's a good question, and I bet our plumbing designer did that, but I'll make sure that they did.
thank you. I just know, I walk around with this, but I know so many people now have their regular water bottles.
Especially if you're outside.
Yes. Thank you.
Good point.
Anything else? Thank you very
Thank
much. We appreciate it. Next, we have Mr. Mark Woods, our CFO, to present the annual finance report and our monthly financial reports.
Good evening.
Hi.
We will start with the, okay, I want to make sure before I grab it and start expecting it. Thank you. All right, we'll start with the annual financial report. You had a copy of the unaudited AFR and balance sheet in there. I won't bore you going through all of that line by line. We've done this for a couple of years, so I really like this report because it gives us a chance to highlight kind of where we've been. So I'm going to start with the first page here. And what you'll see here is our general fund revenue. You'll see there our local revenue is 50.51% for this last year, and our state was 48.6, 0.86, a little bit of federal money, and then just some odd and end other donations, some other things that came in. So to give you some perspective, you see there our local is more than the state. That seems to be our trend, and the trend that'll keep going forward. We talked about when we did budget that our SEEK is going to be lower than it's been since 2014. Well, SEEK makes up your majority right there of your state money. For fiscal year 22, which was the year prior, taking those numbers into account, local was 47.78% and state was 51.31%. So you can see where the jump is. That's the trend. That's where it's heading. FY21, which was the year prior to that, 47.46 for local and 49.98% for state. All the way back to fiscal year 20, 43% was local and 54.91% state. So as you can see, our state is trending backwards. The burden's being pushed to the local. That's the way the formula is built. So you can see our trend there. It's everything we talked about when we did the budget. So moving on, the next page, here's our expenditures, how they trended for fiscal year 23. That first column there, I know it's a little hard to see on the screen, but that first column is instruction. Of our general fund budget, 54.4% was spent on direct instruction to students. That's a really, really good number. That is something that the board should be very proud of. Your endeavors and everything that you've taken on. We're directly spending money. The next two smaller columns, student support and instructional staff support, those are broken out according to coding and Munis. So really, those are instruction numbers as well, but they're broken out. So you keep moving forward. You can see district admin support, 2.24%, school admin 5%, business support 1.94%, plant and operations, that's where you jump back up. That's us taking care of our facilities. That's expected. It should be a little bit higher because you have to keep number of facilities maintained. So that's 14%, and then student transportation is your last big column there. Of course, you would expect that with as many buses as we run and everything, that would be a little bit higher, and it's 11.5%. Excuse me. All right, so moving on to the next. This is no longer a requirement, but if you remember, there was a push from the state a few years ago to calculate these things. I'd just like to give you a little bit of trend data so you can kind of see that we're maintaining low admin rates. State average, of course, fiscal year 22 was the last audited numbers we have to be able to pull. Across the state, it was 18.35%, and you can see we're staying down in the 12s. That's extremely low for administrative percentage. It's really, really good. We're tracking, we're spending money directly on students and providing instruction for students and not on administrative side. So to give you an actual business calculation that I find more useful than this one because they take it as a percentage of instruction. If you take our district admin and business support sections out, divide that by total expense to get a true admin percentage of 3.47%. That's extremely low in the business world. Anything under 10% is phenomenal for administrative percentages. I took it a step further and included plant and operations in that number to give you kind of an overhead number. 13.82% overhead is what that'd be considered in business terms. Still extremely low. We are spending money on direct services. All right, next figure we kind of go over. General fund, salaries and fringe. You can see how much of our general fund budget, 77.89%. Comparatively, it was 78.13 in the year before, so we're still tracking where we should be. That's the target goals. You start getting over that, you start getting in a danger zone, so that's really good. You want to stay in those 70%. You start getting into 80 and everything. Those are districts have a hard time meeting their operation needs. When your salary and fringe creep up in those ranges, up over 80%, you have a hard time meeting just your basic operational needs. So that's a really good number. Positive impacts on the balance. Community growth. Our Medicaid revenue has stayed steady. Of course, we've increased our investment revenue over the last year. That's been really good for us. Management of our financial resources. We've seen some small increases in the seat base. We got another $100 per student this year that, of course, then gets trimmed and cut, and it's really not $100. And then our stimulus funds, we've used those to offset additional expenditures stemming from inflation and other things that we've needed to provide support to students stemming from the pandemic. On the horizon, we always have to keep a watch out for classified retirement. There is a state provision that allows them to increase up to 12% per year, the costs that we have to pay. District growth. So as our assessments grow, talked about that, we saw our trend has been that our SEEK funding is going down. Well, as your assessments grow, your tier 1 and everything starts getting hit in SEEK funding, you start losing SEEK funding. Of course, as you grow, you always have additional staffing needs. So we have to keep that in mind. This next one's a big one. ESSER and ART funds, they'll be depleted after the end of the school year. We receive indirect funding that goes into the general fund to administer those. That's a revenue source that we will no longer have. So we have to keep that in mind as we project out next year, the following year, the year after. Those are things that I look at, sometimes 5 years out to see where I think we might hit so that we have a plan going into it. Because we can't just take it year by year. Completion of the CSEP bus lease, that's coming. That's $285,000 straight out of the budget. So we got to keep that in mind. And then finally, any additional inflationary impacts as we continue forward. Overall, I think we had a pretty good year. We managed our resources well, and I'll take any questions you might have over the annual report.
On that retirement, is it supposed to keep going up every year? Isn't there like a 4-year thing that's going to do it?
So with the classified retirement, they can actually increase it every year. What they look at is they look how their investments and everything track. We got a little bit, this year was a surprise. Originally, they projected a increase. In late May, early June, they came back and said, no, the investments did really well, it's performed really well, and we got a small decrease in the rate. It was small. But no, they can actually, the way it's set, they can take that up to 12% each year based on their needs. Yes.
Do we think it would be possible to have these stress relief toys here every time we talk about the future budget? I think it could be helpful. You do a great job,
Thank you.
especially summarizing the big picture for everybody. So I guess we're on to our monthly report.
Yes, you're ready for that. All right. Let me switch gears here. All right. So, you're fine. We'll start with our bank rec. As of July 31st, the district ended with a reconciled balance of $123,926,332.64. Most of that is the bond money that we just got for our project for Madison Middle. If you take that money out, that was $60 million. That puts us very much comparative where we were exactly this time last year. So we do have, because we know we have a couple of projects coming forward, we do have a little money in our FSPK and our capital outlay, which are restricted funds for building. We've been able to save about 2 years' worth in there to put towards these projects because we knew they were coming. So that's the goal of that, is you save for 2 years and then you put them towards that so you don't have to bond as much. So those 3 items actually make up the amount, big amount of the balance. Of the reconciled balance, the district has $65,241,103.45 in investments. Those rates range from 2 to 5.05%. Consists of 2 local CDs and treasury bills. That's, we reported last time we had invested some of the bond money. While we're holding on to it, we put it out in investments. Of course, any return on the bond money has to be spent on projects, but that's less money that we may have to put in from a general fund or other things. So making that money count, we're earning a margin on that above what we pay out in interest, so at least we're maximizing that. In addition, the board received the balance sheet and revenue and expense report for July 31st. And of course, there's not much trend data to look at right now. Most of it's just getting ready for a school year and lots of expenditures buying supplies. Any questions?
Questions? If no questions, if I can get a motion then to approve the monthly financial report as presented.
I'll make the motion.
So moved by Ms. Burford, second by Ms. Coyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Very much. Next on the agenda is item 6B, to approve the fiscal year '24 motor vehicle tax rate. Do you want to speak to this, or do you want me to just explain?
This rate is statutorily fixed. It's not changed since 1983, so we do have to go through the motion of adopting it every year.
So the rate is the same. It's 55.8 cents per $100 of assessed value upon motor vehicles and watercraft for the calendar year of 2024. Can I get a motion then to approve the 2024 fiscal year motor vehicle tax rate?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Rutherford. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Cobb. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next is item 6C. It's what Tony spoke about. We need to approve the final plans in the BG3 for the former Kentucky Tech Center renovation Phase 2. Were there any other questions about that? If If not, then can I get a motion to approve final plans and BG3 for the former Kentucky Technology Center renovation Phase 2?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Cobb. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Barford. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is another item that Tony referenced. It's item 6D to approve the final plans in the BG3 for the Phillips Building renovation Phase 2. Any questions on that? If not, if I can get a motion then to approve the final plans and BG3 for the Phillips Building renovation Phase 2.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Rutherford. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Coyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is item 6E to approve the BG1 for the HVAC renovation at Madison Kindergarten Academy. Any questions? If not, if I can get a motion then to approve the BG1 for the HVAC renovation at Madison Kindergarten Academy.
So move.
So moved by Ms. Burford. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Rutherford. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is item 6F to approve the first reading of policies 03.123 and 03.223. Did everybody have the opportunity to review? Do you want to speak to this?
I'll speak quickly. This is we're doing this one after our other policy reviews because we eliminated the emergency day and replaced it with an additional personal day. And these two policies just happen to mention an emergency day. So it's just a language. Just wanted to make sure we struck that, and so there was not reference to something that no longer exists.
Any questions? If not, then if I can get a motion to approve the first reading of policy 03.123 and 03.223.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Coyle. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Cobb. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is item 6G, create and ratify paid assistant for wrestling. You can
Yeah,
speak.
I'll speak on this one too. Wrestling, the sport of wrestling is changing a little bit. It's continuing to grow, and particularly the State Athletic Association is now designating a state championship in women's wrestling. So we're not to the point in either scheduling or participants to where we need to add an complete additional coaching staff and program. But that change does create a couple of logistical pieces. For example, we do the meets during the week shouldn't be an issue, but there will be some meets on weekends where you'll have to have one group, probably 2 or 3 weekends where one group will be at a female tournament and another group will be at a male tournament. And so we need a little bit of additional staffing there. So we would like to add at each high school an additional paid assistant to work with the wrestling program at Madison Central and Madison Southern.
Any questions? If not, if I can get a motion to create and ratify a paid assistant for wrestling at Madison Central High School and Madison Southern High School.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Rutherford. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Burford. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is to create and ratify a paid assistant for Madison Southern High School baseball.
Paid by the boosters. They're wanting to add additional staff.
Any questions? If I can get a motion then to create and ratify a paid assistant for Madison Southern High School baseball at $1,077 plus any associated fringe benefits to be paid by the boosters.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Cobb. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Burford. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is item 6I, to create and ratify 2 athletic site managers.
The athletic site managers are the individuals that oversee the getting the officials there and taking care of them and crowd control and 2 or 3 other things. This is done by our administrators and our athletic directors, but when you start to look at the multiple events that we hold on campus and campuses on any given night, we have a lot of Tuesdays and Thursdays and some Fridays where we have multiple activities. You'll have a volleyball game going on, a girls' soccer game going on, a boys' soccer game going on, maybe a JV football. So lots of events. It's impossible for all of our people to be at all of those separately. So the position of athletic site manager, this is taking a teacher or another certified person and just designating them with that role, and then they get a schedule and they help share those manager duties. We've been doing this for a few years. The schools pay for that with their athletic funds. So in this case, Madison Southern is requesting to do that through their athletic
Do we
funds.
already have the ones at Central this year?
I believe so. I believe those have already been approved. Yes, I believe we have. Mr. Woods is shaking his head no, so we probably will be doing that at a board meeting coming up very soon.
Is this last year?
I was gonna say that might have been last year.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for several years. We have to wait on the schools to actually request it because they're paying for it. So, so until they send that request to us, we don't take action.
Any other questions? Not if I can get a motion then to create or ratify 2 athletic site manager positions at Madison Southern High School at $1,500 stipend each, paid for through their athletic funds.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Coyle. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rutherford. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is our superintendent's report. Dr.
Thank
Gill.
you. All right. So our teachers officially returned to work Tuesday, and all of our classified staff joined them today as we get the year started. Students come next Wednesday, and we're ready and excited to have kids in the buildings. I've been out in a few buildings the last few days, both high schools actually, and they were having the freshman orientation, and the hallways is filled with kids. If you drive by some of our schools at night, you've probably seen, if you drive by at the right time, huge crowds for the back-to-school nights. So, it's that time of year where everybody's excited and ready to they got out and they bought their new school clothes and new school items, and they're ready to go. So, for our parents out there, I want to mention a couple of things, 2 things. First, expect those buses to be late first day or 2 of our school year. We've got, oftentimes it's difficult, we forget, but we have so many transitions. We have transition from a kindergarten academy to a lot of our first grades. We have transition from elementary to middle. We have transition from middle to high. So on any given year, about a third or a fourth of our kids are in a new school. So learning those new routes, learning those new pieces. And then first day, we have a lot of parents that drop off the first day, but then the kids ride the bus home that afternoon. Well, when the kids come out at 2:30, 2:45, 2:55, they don't know which bus to get on because they haven't been on that bus that year. So the first few days, we have to get all the kinks worked out. Then we get things smoothed out. So be patient with us. We would appreciate it. I also want to mention to our parents, if you haven't taken a look at our district website, take a look at that. Our district website, we've got a few upgrades, but one in particular I want to mention to you is our menu. Our food service menu is now posted on that website. And we've always posted our food service menu, but this one's a little more detailed. It actually has the specific food items, the nutritional value on each one. There's also an alert there that makes you aware of any potential allergens that are included in that food. So if it's I think contains gluten or contains peanuts or whatever, it's listed on there. So I wanted to make sure that we mention that. So please take a look at that. It's a great feature. I hope it's beneficial to our students and to our families. As for me, on July 26th, 27th, I attended the KASS Superintendent Training in Louisville. Then on Monday, the 31st of July, we welcomed our new teachers to the district at the new teacher orientation. I got to speak to our new elementary teachers that afternoon, and I'd spoken to the new middle school and high schools that morning. They all met out at Ignite Academy. Our elementary folks were right here in this room. Great group of educators. Some of them are veterans that have come to us from other districts out of town, but a lot of them are brand new teachers ready to get their career started. So we're thankful to have them in our district. We held Principals Academy on August 1st and 2nd, so we brought all of our principals in for two long days of training and updates for the year. But it was good, and they're ready to roll. We appreciate the work of our principals. On Friday, August the 4th, I participated in the MORE conference, which is, if you're not familiar with MORE, it's the Madison Opioid Response and Empowerment Group. This is a group of community leaders focused on attacking the opioid crisis and seeing what we can do in our community to turn that around. So we were out at the Perkins Building at EKU. The room was full of community folks. Mr. Neely and Mr. Ray attended that with me that day. So our district is committed to doing all that we can within the scope of our work to address that issue. On Tuesday, not October, it's August the 8th, and already I'm jumping through. August the 8th, a couple days ago, I joined a group from the city of Richmond out at Ignite North. They took a tour of that facility, and we had some businesses in here looking at potentially locating in Madison County in Richmond. And so we were showing them how we are partnering with workforce development and partnering with the city of Richmond to grow our local economy. And then yesterday and today, I had the opportunity to address all of our school staffs during some training sessions, 2 held at Madison Central and 2 held at Madison Southern, and we brought the feeder patterns into those locations. So 2 good days. Really enjoyed seeing everybody and talking to them. And like I said, we're ready to get the year started. That's my superintendent report.
Thank you. Next is comments from the board.
I'll just say I'm looking forward to visiting some of the schools next week, next Wednesday, so it'll be an exciting time.
Always exciting. Anything else? If not, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Cobb, second by Ms. Coyle. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.